Daniel Mercer learned the truth on a night that was supposed to be ordinary. The apartment was quiet, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. He had just finished washing the dishes, letting warm water run over his hands to ease the tension he carried home from work every evening. Laura's phone lay on the kitchen counter, vibrating softly, its screen lighting up the dark room. Daniel was not the type to snoop. Trust had always been easy for him, but the phone kept buzzing. Once, twice, 3 times, as if someone urgently needed an answer. Without thinking too deeply, he glanced at the screen, meaning only to silence it. The name froze him in place. Mark Caldwell. Daniel's breath caught. Mark was not just anyone. He was the friend who had been part of Daniel's life for over a decade. They had met in their early 20s, struggling, ambitious, certain the world owed them something better. Mark had been there for promotions, breakups, failures, and wins. He had stood beside Daniel on his wedding day, smiling proudly. As Daniel promised his future to Laura, Daniel told himself there had to be a harmless explanation. Old friends text each other. That was normal. But the message preview shattered that fragile hope. She deserves the truth. I can't keep lying. Daniel's fingers tightened around the phone. His heart began to pound. Slow at first, then loud enough that it felt like the room was echoing it back at him. He read the message again, hoping the words would change, hoping he had misunderstood. They didn't. The air felt heavy. Thoughts raced, colliding with each other. Laura had been distant lately. She came home later than usual, always tired, always distracted. She laughed less. She checked her phone more. Daniel had asked once if something was wrong. She had smiled, kissed his cheek, and said she was just stressed. He had believed her. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Laura walked into the kitchen, her hair still damp from a shower, her face relaxed until she saw Daniel standing there, pale, holding her phone. In that instant, her expression changed. The color drained from her face and her shoulders stiffened. Neither of them spoke. Daniel didn't ask a question. He didn't need to. The silence answered everything. Laura opened her mouth as if to explain, but the words seemed to vanish before reaching her lips. Her eyes filled with tears, not dramatic or loud, but quiet. Heavy tears that slid down her cheeks. That hurt more than anger would have. How long? Daniel finally asked. His voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Laura looked down. It wasn't supposed to happen, she said softly. I didn't plan it. It just did. Daniel felt something break inside him. Not all at once, but slowly, like a crack spreading through glass. He thought of dinners the 3 of them had shared, jokes, shared memories. Trust passed around the table without question. Mark had looked him in the eye every time. Daniel stepped back, putting distance between himself and Laura. He noticed small details he had never paid attention to before, the way her hand shook, the way she avoided his gaze, the packed bag resting near the bedroom door. She had been preparing for this moment. Somewhere inside her, she had already chosen to leave. I'm going to my sister's, Laura said. I need time. Daniel nodded, not because he understood, but because he couldn't speak. Words felt useless. Now? Laura moved past him, hesitating as if she wanted to say more, then stopping herself. The door closed behind her with a soft click that echoed louder than any shout. Daniel stood alone in the kitchen. The apartment felt unfamiliar, like a place he had entered by mistake. He sat down at the table and stared at the wall, replaying the message again and again. Mark's name burned in his mind. Of all people, it had been him. Not a stranger, not a mistake made in weakness, a friend, a brother, in everything but blood. Anger rose quickly, sharp and consuming. Daniel felt heat rush through his body, his jaw tightening, his hands clenching into fists. He imagined confronting Mark, imagined shouting, imagined landing every word like a blow. But beneath the anger was something heavier. Betrayal, trust. Once broken, didn't shatter loudly. It collapsed inward, leaving emptiness behind. Daniel poured himself a glass of water, though his throat was too tight to drink. He paced the living room, his steps fast and restless. Every object carried a memory. The couch where Laura used to curl up beside him. The framed photo of their wedding day, Mark standing right there in the background, smiling. Daniel turned. The frame face down. His phone buzzed. A message from Mark this time, sent directly to him. "We need to talk." Daniel laughed, a short, hollow sound that surprised even him. Talk as if words could stitch this back together. As if explanations mattered now. He didn't reply. The night stretched on, slow and unforgiving. Sleep never came. Instead, Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, letting thoughts race unchecked. Questions circled endlessly. How long had it gone on? How many lies had he accepted without noticing? How many times had Mark sat across from him, hiding the truth? By morning, the anger had changed, hardened, becoming focused, controlled. Daniel wasn't screaming inside anymore. He was calculating. He went to work, functioning on instinct. He answered emails, attended meetings, nodded at conversations he barely heard. His coworkers noticed something was off, but didn't ask. Daniel welcomed the distraction. It gave him space to think. Mark's face appeared in his mind constantly. Not as a villain, but as a familiar presence twisted into something unrecognizable. That made it worse. Daniel could understand a stranger betraying him. But this was personal, intentional, close. At lunch, Daniel sat alone, scrolling through old photos on his phone. Birthdays, trips, smiling faces frozen in time. Stopped at one taken years ago. The three of them at a small restaurant, laughing over cheap wine and shared stories. Daniel remembered feeling lucky that night. Lucky for love, lucky for friendship. He closed the gallery. The realization hit him slowly but firmly. This wasn't just heartbreak. It was humiliation. Mark had taken something that wasn't his and walked away believing he could explain it later. Laura had chosen secrecy over honesty. And Daniel had been the last to know. By the time the workday ended, Daniel had made a silent decision. He didn't know what he would do yet, but he knew one thing clearly. He would not let this end quietly. As the sun set and the city lights flickered on, Daniel walked home with steady steps. The sadness was still there, deep and aching, but beneath it burned a growing resolve. Betrayal demanded balance. Wrong demanded consequence. And for the first time since the message appeared on that glowing screen, Daniel felt something close to purpose. The desire for revenge had taken root. Daniel's life moved forward, but his mind stayed trapped in the moment everything broke. Days passed, yet time felt stretched and uneven, like it no longer followed rules. He woke early, unable to sleep past dawn, and lay staring at the ceiling, until the light crept into the room. The apartment felt too quiet now. Every sound echoed, every silence spoke. He returned Laura's phone to the drawer where it belonged, but the damage was done. Her absence filled every corner. Her coffee mug still sat by the sink. Her scarf hung on the back of a chair. Daniel did not move these things. Not because he hoped she would come back, but because touching them felt like admitting the truth. It was permanent. Anger stayed close, but it was no longer wild. It had sharpened. Daniel noticed this change when he stopped imagining loud confrontations and started imagining outcomes. He didn't want to scream. He wanted control. He wanted Mark to feel what he felt, mauled, exposed, powerless. Mark tried to reach him again. Messages came in carefully written lines full of apology and explanation. Mark said it wasn't planned. He said emotions took over. He said he never meant to hurt Daniel. Each message ended the same way. "We should talk." Daniel read them. All. He saved none. He replied to none. Instead, he observed. He paid attention to details he once ignored. Mark's social media posts continued as usual work achievements. Friendly dinners.com confidence. Laura stayed with her sister, telling mutual friends she needed space. No one spoke publicly about what had happened. The world moved on, untouched. That quiet hurt more than open judgment would have. Daniel began walking at night. Long walks through dim streets helped him think. The city felt honest after dark. No smiles, no small talk, just movement and thought. He replayed the past, not with sadness now, but with clarity. He saw moments he had dismissed before. Sudden interest in Laura's opinions, the private jokes, the way Mark lingered. After dinners, Daniel had trusted too easily. With clarity came planning. Not rushed or emotional, but careful. Daniel knew Mark's life well. He knew how much Mark valued his image. Reputation meant everything to him. Trust was the foundation of his career. Daniel also knew the truth would hurt more than lies ever could. But each time Daniel imagined taking action, something held him back. It wasn't kindness, it was doubt. He asked himself questions he didn't like. Would revenge bring relief? Or just more noise? Would Mark's fall fix anything that was broken? Or would it simply change the shape of the pain? The answers shifted depending on the day. Some mornings, Daniel woke convinced revenge was the only fair outcome. He felt steady and sure. Other days, the thought of becoming the person who destroyed another life, even one who deserved it, made his stomach turn. The struggle exhausted him. One evening, Daniel ran into Mark by chance. It happened outside a small grocery store near Daniel's apartment. Daniel had just paid and stepped outside when he saw Mark approaching, hands in his pockets, face tense. They stopped a few feet apart. Mark spoke first. "I didn't expect to see you." Daniel studied him. Mark looked thinner, tired. The confidence was still there, but strained. "Neither did I," Daniel said. Silence stretched between them. People passed by, unaware of the weight hanging in the air. "I'm sorry," Mark said quietly. "I know that doesn't fix anything." Daniel nodded once. "No, it doesn't." Mark swallowed. "I never planned for this to happen. I thought I could manage it. I was wrong." "You thought you could manage lying," Daniel said. His voice stayed calm, which surprised even him. Mark flinched. "I thought I was protecting everyone." Daniel almost laughed. "You were protecting yourself." Mark looked away. For a moment, he seemed smaller. "Maybe," he admitted. That word maybe did something strange to Daniel. It didn't soften him, but it complicated things. Mark wasn't denying responsibility. He wasn't attacking. It looked like someone who had already started paying a price. Daniel felt the anger stir, but it didn't rise the way he expected. Instead, he felt tired. Tired of carrying the weight alone. "I don't want to talk," Daniel said. "Not now." "Maybe not ever." Mark nodded. "I understand." They walked away in opposite directions. Daniel didn't look back. That encounter stayed with him. It didn't erase the betrayal, but it shifted the story in his mind. Mark was no longer just an enemy. He was a flawed man who had made a selfish choice and was now living with it. That realization made revenge harder. Still, the desire didn't disappear. It returned at night, whispering promises of balance. Daniel began writing again, something he hadn't done in years. He didn't journal feelings. He wrote scenarios, outcomes, consequences. He explored what would happen if he exposed the truth and what would happen if he stayed silent. Each path had a cost. Daniel's friends noticed his distance. They invited him out. He declined most offers. When he did go, he listened more than he spoke. People talked about ordinary problems, work stress, money, relationships, Daniel realized. How fragile normal life was. How easily it could collapse. One night, while sitting alone in his apartment, Daniel opened his laptop and began drafting a message. It wasn't emotional, it was factual. Dates, context, proof, everything was clean and clear. No insults, no exaggeration. He stopped halfway through. His hands hovered over the keyboard. His heart beat steadily, not fast, not slow. This was the edge, the place where thought turned into action. He imagined Mark reading the message. Imagined the calls that would follow, the meetings, the whispers, the fall. He imagined the sense of power that would come with pressing send. Then he imagined the silence afterward. Daniel leaned back in his chair. He looked around the apartment. It still felt empty, but it also felt like a space waiting to be rebuilt. He wondered what kind of person he wanted to be when that rebuilding began. Revenge offered a sharp ending, a clean break. But healing didn't need sharp edges. Healing needed time, honesty, and the courage to walk away without applause. Daniel closed the laptop without saving the draft. The conflict inside him didn't end that night. But something shifted. The need for revenge no longer felt urgent. It felt like a choice rather than a demand. And that made all the difference. The night Daniel finally faced the decision arrived quietly. No warning, no dramatic build. Just a calm heaviness that settled over him as he sat alone at his desk, the city lights glowing through the window. The laptop was open again. The message was there, rewritten, polished, ready. Every word carried truth. Every sentence carried weight. Daniel read it once more, slowly. This was the moment everything narrowed to a single choice. His phone buzzed. Message from Laura. I need to talk. Not to fix things, just to be honest. Daniel stared at the screen. For weeks, he had imagined this moment, but now it felt different. Not explosive, just tired. He replied with a simple answer. Okay, they met the next evening at a quiet cafe near the river. Neutral ground. Laura arrived first and stood. When she saw him, unsure whether to hug him or stay still. Daniel nodded and sat across from her. She looked smaller somehow, as if the weight of her choices had pressed down on her. I won't justify anything, Laura said quickly. I won't say it was confusion or fate. I made a choice. And I hurt you. Daniel listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't argue. He noticed how her hands twisted together, how her voice shook when she spoke Mark's name. I told myself I'd tell you, she continued. Every day I planned it. Every day I failed. Daniel felt the familiar ache, but it no longer controlled him. Why him? He asked. Laura swallowed. Because he listened, because he made me feel seen, and because I was weak enough to want that more than honesty. Daniel nodded. The answer didn't comfort him, but it clarified things. This wasn't about passion or destiny. It was about choices stacked on top of each other. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Laura said. I just didn't want to disappear without owning what I did. Daniel appreciated that. Ownership mattered. When they stood to leave, Laura hesitated. What are you going to do? She asked softly. Daniel didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure himself. I'm going to move forward, he said finally. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. I hope you do. As Daniel walked home, he realized something important. Laura's honesty didn't erase the betrayal, but it closed a door that had been left open too long. The past no longer felt unfinished. That night, Daniel returned to the laptop. The message waited patiently. He read it again, then minimized the screen. Instead of sending it, he opened a blank document. He began writing not accusations, not plans, but reflections. He wrote about trust, about how easy it was to lose and how hard it was to rebuild. He wrote about anger that felt powerful but faded quickly, and quiet strength that lasted. Hours passed without him noticing. Near midnight, Daniel received another message. It's time from Mark. I heard you met Laura. I won't ask what she said. I just want you to know I'm not sleeping. Much I think about what I did every day. Daniel didn't feel satisfaction reading that. He felt clarity. Mark was already living with consequences. Not the public kind, the private kind. The ones that didn't fade when the noise stopped. Daniel typed a response slowly. I won't destroy you. Not because you don't deserve consequences, but because I don't want to carry that weight. This ends here. He stared at the message for a long time, then sent it. The moment passed quietly. No rush. No thrill. No relief rush he had imagined. Just calm. The next weeks were strange, lighter and heavier at the same time. Daniel moved apartments, choosing a smaller place with more light. He packed only what he needed. He donated the rest. Each item left behind felt like letting go of a version of himself that no longer fit. He avoided places tied to old memories and explored new ones instead. Morning walks, evening runs, small bookstore where no one knew his name. He found comfort in routine, in simple tasks that didn't demand emotional energy. Friends noticed the change. Daniel spoke more openly now, not about details, but about lessons he learned that people respected honesty more than drama. He learned that silence could be powerful when chosen, not forced. One afternoon, months later, Daniel ran into Mark again. This time it was intentional. Mark had asked for 5 minutes. Just 5. They met in a public park. Sunlight filtered through the trees. Children laughed nearby. Mark looked different. Less confident, more real. I won't thank you, Mark said. That wouldn't be fair. But I need you to know I understand what you chose not to do. Daniel nodded. I chose myself. Mark took a breath. I'm working on being better. Not for forgiveness, just because I can't live the way I was. That's your work, Daniel said. Not mine. They shook hands. Nothing more, nothing less. As Daniel walked away, he felt something close to peace. Not happiness, not triumph. Peace. That night, Daniel sat by his window and watched the city lights again. He thought about revenge, about how loud it had been in his mind at first, how convincing, how certain it felt. But revenge, he realized, was a promise that asked too much. It asked him to stay tied to the worst moment of his life, to define himself by someone else's betrayal. Letting go didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing not to live there anymore. Daniel closed the laptop for the last time. He knew healing would still take time. Some nights would still be hard. Memories would still sting. But he also knew something else now. Walking away had not made him weak. It had made him free. And in that freedom, Daniel found something far more lasting than revenge. He found his future.